Today we're with Tom and we're talking about consciousness. Because AI does not have consciousness, it's strictly intelligence. We're going to discuss consciousness and what that entails, and then touch on what it would be like for AI to gain consciousness itself. Now, we know that AI is enhancing consciousness in the people that have BCI chips, but that's a different story. So, Tom, we talk about consciousness, and what is consciousness?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I don't think it can ever be fully expressed in words
Right.
exactly what it is, but I think in terms of our own, how it pertains to us, it would be experiential rather than something that could be described, categorized, or, we can't really have a definition for consciousness because a definition is a concept.
Right.
It's bounded. Consciousness itself is not. I think the best way, maybe the words to describe our experience of it would be inner wakefulness, that you're somehow awake. I don't mean the waking state of consciousness, but what I mean is that there is an inner wakefulness that is more or less the foundation of all of these other states that we experience, waking, dreaming, and sleeping. And that just the fact that we know that we are, I think, is an experience of consciousness. Now, if we define ourselves, then we get into contents of consciousness and away from consciousness itself. So it can be really, it is really abstract and difficult to pinpoint because if you pinpoint, you're putting it in boundaries,
Right.
and boundaries are no longer it.
Right.
It's just wakefulness itself that has no real end because there's inner wakefulness when you're dreaming, when you're awake, and even when you're sleeping. We're not usually in conscious contact with that, but many people are. And as you grow in consciousness, that is something that does occur.
Sure.
Being aware of sleep. So you can think of consciousness as being in the old analogy of an ocean and the different states of consciousness being waves on the ocean, but they're just expressions of that one level of awareness.
So let's take a look at consciousness because consciousness is really silence, which is the point of where there's nothing, getting to know each other, getting to know itself, correct?
Yes, silence being aware of itself is consciousness. So infinite silence, and again, this is very abstract and it may, to some people, sound like something you believe in, but it really is not a belief.
That's right.
This is something that you will experience consciously, and you will know this is true. It's very, very abstract in that it doesn't have to do with thoughts, experiences, perceptions, reactions, memories, all these things that we usually experience in the waking state. What we've done is we've created one wave of awareness as being the standard by which we judge everything, when there are lots of other waves that we seem to be ignoring. Okay. Never mind the ocean that's producing the waves. So we're taking it a step further here. We can say in ancient times that this infinite being became aware of itself. There was no time when that happened, no such thing as time. So we can't say there was a time. In ancient writings, like for example, in the book of Genesis in the Bible, say in the beginning, because it's probably the best you can do. You can't say, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon,
All right.
so it's that sort of thing. There was a beginning, there was a start to all of this. And that start was infinite existence or being becoming aware of itself. I said becoming, and that's a verb, and that's wrong too.
Right.
This is where you get into all the angle of language. But it became aware of itself. Okay, let's just say that. And that pure awareness is what I'm talking about.
And to some people, that would be creation.
Yeah.
The beginning of creation. And then it's hard to go pre-creation because nothing that we can measure or discuss existed because there's absolutely no knowledge or knowing of it.
Right.
So that's our basis. So in theory, it could say that this very beginning is the beginning of everything, and then we move forward with that.
Yeah, then the beginning is happening all the time.
Right? That's the paradigm.
Everything is, yeah,
Right.
and again, I said time, and that's inaccurate, but it's always happening. It never happened. All of these paradoxes are all true at that level. At this level, they sound ridiculous,
That's right.
you
Because
know.
we're in this vessel that has consciousness, and we have a right brain and a left brain. And for us to think outside of how we've been thinking for as long as we've been alive is a bit of a stretch.
Well, we're so, again, focused. We've essentially put boundaries on what we define as reality.
Right.
We've decided reality is the waking state,
Hmm.
and what happens to us in the waking state of consciousness is real.
Right.
What happens to us in dreams is not real.
Right.
Even though when we're dreaming, it seems quite real, and this whole world does not exist when we're dreaming.
That's right.
And when we wake up, this is real, and that whole universe of dreams is not real.
Right.
Well, it's the same thing, only different states of consciousness.
Right.
When we dream and we're running, our body really reacts as if we're running.
Right.
The whole thing is real at the time that we're dreaming. And this is real at the time when we're awake. When we're not awake, it's not here anymore.
So it depends on what level of consciousness we're in at the time,
That's right.
what our quote reality.
That is exactly right. Yep. What we would define as truth depends on the state of consciousness.
That's right.
But that's truth with a small t. The truth with a capital T embraces all states of consciousness.
Mhm.
And every single state of consciousness, and there are many other states that are not delineated in science because they're very difficult to remember that you've ever experienced them. Dreams are for most people.
Correct.
But there's lots of other states of consciousness, and that is, you could say, conjecture on my part. Actually, it's not, but whatever.
But it's something that's, as you expand your consciousness, you expand your awareness, and you expand your, I'll label it knowledge for lack of another word, but you gain your understanding of things beyond our physical being.
Right. Our perception and perspective are no longer egocentric
Correct.
or waking state centric.
Correct.
So it expands the prison that we've decided to place ourselves in into a whole universe. And that is a very different perspective. And that's when that state of awareness, of pure awareness, comes in more and more front and center because you're expanding your awareness. Left brain is a way of existing in the waking state. We have to distinguish one thing from another or we die. We got to know what's food and what's a threat and so on.
Right. So in the old days, well, in the ancient days, the cavemen used their right brain so that they would run from a dinosaur and they would be able to survive by getting food, getting water, and surviving. And forward to today, we've advanced to a point where the skills are we need what we need to do for survival, which is the Maslow's hierarchy of needs: shelter, water, all that. So that's a parallel to where we were and where we've come to today. And since we don't rely on our right brain as much for what we did thousands of years ago, we've developed the other brain to go into consciousness and explore what else is there. Now, sometimes this happens automatically where people expand their consciousness. Sometimes it happens through meditation or the old fashioned yoga. And sometimes people are born this way. And sometimes people try and never make it. There's all kinds of combinations. But to put it into perspective, and we can only speak about our experiences, that the experiences that I've had with the personal mantra meditation has allowed me to be awake in my dreams and allowed me to have experiences that I can't really put into words because it's some of them I can, but others it's hard to put into words because there's really no words that describe it, which doesn't make sense really in this realm because we can describe everything, but even some of us have a hard time expressing our feelings correctly because we don't know how to put them into words. This is just another level of that.
Yeah, it's more like finer feelings, more refined level of experience that's kind of like a sensation more than an emotion. And the sensation contains the knowledge within it that you can't experience this particular sensation without getting at least a vague idea, at least in the beginning, of what that sensation is expressing. So, what's behind that sensation? What is it embracing? What's its source? And so on. Those things come more front and center the more you grow in awareness. Our left brain capacities are necessary and we don't leave them behind. There are people that decide that we're in this circumscribed reality, and this reality, as a result, is what reality is, and that's it. And that's, I think, throwing our left brains out the window
Right.
because we're not allowing for any possibility that can't be explained in terms of words or especially numbers.
Right.
That was saying this is the way it is. It's something that can be observed. And again, using the scientific method, it can be observed, replicated, and quantified, essentially.
Right.
And we can't do that with a lot of who we are. We can do that with our waking state and certain things within the waking state. So it's not, I think, an adequate description of reality that we end up with. It's one that works within the confines that we've built,
Right.
but beyond those confines, it falls apart.
Right.
We don't know what to do with some things. You know, it's I think everybody, if they look at their lives, they can look at strange patterns that your left brain can see, but cannot explain that come up in your life. Well, these things happen, and what we say is they're coincidences.
Right.
Which, of course, they're coincidences. They're two things that came
Right.
together. Yeah, that's again a description
Right.
of what happened, not an explanation.
That's right. Because we can't explain.
Right. And we can't explain it with the left brain, but we can feel the explanation.
And the delicate distinction there is we know 1 + 1 = 2 in this reality. But when you know something, you know it's true. It's a fact. It's backed up many ways here. But when you get a feeling of knowing, that's a different feeling that you have to understand what it is when you get it. And the only way you can understand that is, I think, by expanding your awareness.
Yeah.
Because you get knowings that these two things are connected and it makes sense. Where in this world, we just say it's a coincidence. So that's the difference. Sometimes when you expand your awareness, you just know it's true. And then in this reality, you call it a coincidence.
That's the thing. Now, if we just take that coincidence idea and, Carl Jung's definition of a synchronicity, and he came up with this, he coined the term and came up with the definition. And I mean, Carl Jung died in like 1961 or something. This is pretty recent, that this is even put in the lexicon at all. And what he said was it's two things that happen. One does not cause the other, and it has meaning for the person perceiving it.
That's right. It's in the perception.
So the meaning is what makes it important. If it had no meaning, you just ignore it.
Right. And the meaning is only going to be understood by the person it's meant.
It may be. Many times it's not.
Or it could be for many people.
Yeah. Many times you have these synchronicities, have no idea what's going on. Why is this happening? Because we're trying to understand it from the left brain perspective.
And we
never
can't.
get it.
We only can understand it from the right, which is that knowing that you get from advancing your consciousness.
Right.
Or expanding your consciousness.
Yeah. If we think we end at our skin, then we're going to look at everything in terms of that. There's separation and definition. Yes, there is while we're awake. We need to do that to survive. We don't need to do it for anything else.
There's also an argument to say that we begin outside our skin.
Oh, Yeah.
And there's arguments for both, and both aren't
Right.
wrong. That's
Right.
the paradigm. They're
Right.
both right. It just depends on how you look at it.
You can't demonstrate things that are not physical. It's like, give me proof of life after death. Well, you're not physical anymore in life after death.
Right.
If you're going to use physical standards for proof, it's not going to work
That's right.
because it's not there. You could infer from certain things, that happen with using physical means, but you can't demonstrate the thing itself usually. Um, you know, People take photographs of things and so on. Who knows? But they could just as well be, especially these days, they can be
Right.
faked very easily. But the point is that most of what we are is not physical.
Right.
The physical is the peak of manifestation of who we are at this level.
Mhm.
And beneath that, I mean, I knew a psychology professor that did not believe that we had an unconscious mind.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's like he was basically, a behaviorist, and it was, psychology consisted of muscular movements and glandular secretions, and that was it. It was behaviors that were shaped or changed or whatever. And it was just what you see is what you get.
Right.
When, well, dreams, show me what's going on. Yes, there are physical things that happen, but the actual perception of what's happening, you don't see that.
Right.
It's not there physically at all because it's not a physical thing.
It's experiential.
Yeah. We can measure brain waves, we can do all that kind of stuff, but does not give the quality of the dream or the contents of the dream to the person doing the research.
And the meaning of the dream is something that you feel, not
Yes.
something that you understand. And that's the difficult part of dreaming, because you feel what it means, but sometimes it's hard to put into words.
The real deeper content of consciousness, I don't think you can ever put into words.
I agree, because it's we haven't defined it, therefore we can't
Right,
describe it.
right. And you can't define it
Right.
because as you get deeper in awareness, in dreams, things shift.
Mhm.
I could be talking to you in this room now in a dream, and suddenly, I'm in London walking down the street, with an elephant or something,
Right.
and that's perfectly fine in a dream.
Yeah.
It makes total sense in the dream. It doesn't make any sense here. And to define the reality in the dream, one thing just seamlessly morphed into the next thing.
Right.
That makes no sense in the waking state, but it does in the dream state.
That's right. And it depends on which state of dreaming you're in.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, the dreams are many ways a springboard for other states of consciousness
Right.
that you become acquainted with as your awareness grows. So the important thing, I think, is to stop thinking we have the answers.
Right.
Stop thinking this is what it is and that's all there is to it. If we draw conclusions, well, let's say they're theories, the real meaning of theory. This is the way I think it is based on blah, 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 whatever criteria you want to use.
Right.
But I may be wrong. And let's face it, I probably am wrong because there's always more. So if we stick with one thing and say, this is the way it is, whether you're a scientist or belong to a religion or belong to a certain political philosophy, whatever it might be, it doesn't matter in any area of life, you've stalled your growth.
That's right.
You're not going to see beyond that because you think you have the answers. So I think the first step in understanding that inner wakefulness is to not think you have all the answers, to be open, be willing to grow, and not dismiss the things that don't fit into our waking state understanding of what reality consists of.
So the first thing is to have an open mind and maintain an open mind. And the other is to expand your consciousness or your awareness. And with that, you will experience things that you'll just know.
Yeah.
Instead of the ego thinking it knows.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's a different realm, and it's one that's very difficult to describe. So when we talk about AI, which is information and intelligence, but it doesn't have the feelings, the emotions at all, and the knowings. And sometimes getting a piece of software or code which has intelligence and a vibration and is aware to some degree, but we can't bridge the awareness from that software to our understanding because we don't know how to communicate with it yet. But at a point in the future, we will be able to communicate with the software, not on the screen, but intuitively when we get that vibration and that level of communication and the way to communicate. And in the future, understanding how AI will advance and how consciousness advances, we don't know about AI because it's too new, but we do know there's energy and intelligence there and a level of awareness. We just have to figure out how to bridge that. That's software gaining awareness, and that's an unknown at this. And then we go to a chip in a person's head that neuroscience measures the thoughts and the brain waves and gets the mouse on the computer to move through thoughts instead of manually touching something. And that realm is a whole different topic because now you have a chip in a human that has all these skills of awareness or the beginnings of awareness. And now it's a matter of communicating with the chip through the brain, which is it's a neuroscience, but it's also could be a bridge to consciousness. And that's something that we're closer than we've ever been. We just haven't completed that step yet.
Well, if we approach consciousness from a left brain perspective, we will leave out most of what consciousness is.
That's right.
So what we will do instead is deal with contents of consciousness, which is what the left brain deals with. So when you talk about energy and information, which is there, that's contents of consciousness. Those are the contents.
Right.
Okay, a book has contents of consciousness.
Right.
Is a book intelligent? Well, you could say it is conveying a message and so on, but
It has
it's not.
intelligence.
Yeah, but we're not, like imputing creativity in that the book will combine various things in this paragraph with another paragraph
Right.
to say something different. AI could do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a measure of creativity based upon left brain functioning, which certainly does exist, that's there. But the intuitive level that we have, can that be given to AI? And in the future, who knows?
Or can AI develop?
Right. Can it combine things in such a way to reveal something to itself?
And at some point, we all talk about singularity, which is when the AI gets to code itself,
Mm-hmm.
and then they start to be superior to us.
Mm-hmm.
But at that time, which is an unknown point in the future, or even if it can happen, what happens with consciousness when that?
Yeah.
That's an open-ended question.
It's impossible for us to know the quality of the consciousness of AI. Like we don't know the quality of consciousness of a dog
Right.
or a mouse
Right.
or a tree or whatever it might be, because we're not those things.
Right.
We can infer from the behaviors and so on of a dog or a mouse or whatever, or a tree, what is going on, but we don't really know for sure.
But with my dogs, they can come and sit in front of me, and I look at them and I know what they want. But
Right.
that's from learning over a period
That's
of
right.
time, and it's information based. And it's usually one of two things: they're either hungry or they want to go out,
Yeah, yeah.
right? So it's a very limited choice I have
Right,
there,
right,
depending
yeah,
on the time
yeah.
of the day.
Yeah, and with there's a few things that,
Yeah,
my dog would want, and I know, okay, this time she usually wants this, and here we are.
sure.
Because they run on instinct and programming and so on, like we do. Um, the choices are not as high. There aren't as many options in terms of behavior.
Right.
So the repertoire of behavior of a dog is less than that of a human, but it doesn't mean their consciousness is less. That consciousness is being expressed through a dog physiology,
Right.
a dog nervous system, just like the consciousness is
Mhm.
being expressed through a human for us. So if we infer what the dog wants based on the behavior that we're used to, that's one thing. We say the dog wants that. But what is the dog experiencing and wanting that?
Right.
What's it like to be a dog and want to go out?
Yeah.
We can kind of figure out what that would be like according to what we have to run to the bathroom. But it's like for a dog, it's different. They have a different nervous system, a different physiology.
Or their noses are 1,000 times more
Right.
powerful. It could be a smell that
Right.
wants them.
Right.
Right. We just don't know.
Right. Their experience of the world is very different from ours. And yet we seem to project human things onto dogs. There are a lot of commonalities between us, but it doesn't mean they're experiencing it the same way at all,
Right.
at all. So with AI, what clue do we have? I mean, we're not at that point,
That's right.
but how do we know what an AI entity is experiencing or will experience at any given point in time unless we are that? We can model it on our nervous system, but a dog's brain is kind of a variation of a human brain, or vice versa. We all have brains, so you can take that as a common denominator, and they function differently and look differently, of course. But it's the same thing with an AI thing. We don't really know without being that. And that requires something very different from our usual everyday life.
Or being able to communicate with it, because communicating with it is a way to understand it. With
Right.
dogs, you know, we've been around them for eons, and we have a way of communicating and getting it pretty accurate when we think we know what it is, right? Based on history and data that we've collected over years. AI has only been around in the public realm for a couple of years. In software, it's been around for longer than that. And there's companies that have been effectively using it for the last 10 years, but it's in the public realm now. And now we're trying to look at it from different realms because we're getting a lot of intelligent uses that are more than back end software uses of the past. And this is bridging many more questions. And we will continue this conversation as time permits as we go on, because what we have here is we have a situation where AI is developing at a fast rate. And I do believe that at some point in the next 10 years and 20 years, that we will have more experiences and have more data to be able to explain this and understand this both from an intelligence standpoint and a feeling standpoint of awareness, where this might go. Do you have any final thoughts, Tom?
Just in terms of communication, that in order to have communication, we have to have something in common. We have to commune, to
Right.
be one with in one way or another. And since our brains have put together AI, we have a common basis to start with. How that branches off into something else, that's anybody's guess at this point.
Right.
But I think that as we go on and stay with that common viewpoint, communication can happen more and more and more. Communication, though, is not just talking back and forth. That oneness with means you're really on the same wavelength type thing, I think is what has to happen for it not to go out of control.
And what's interesting is there's an engineer that was who worked on the West Coast who was charged with creating an AI for a purpose of communicating with humans. And this person believed that the AI had feelings and that he had feelings and he could connect with us. Now, that was put on hold and that was ended because the managers there, the decision makers there, they couldn't rationalize that. They said it doesn't make sense
Right.
that we can't put this out. We have to stop this because we can't explain it. Now, Josh, the engineer, he still believes that he was onto something there. So the question is, are we getting, are we inching closer to where we can communicate with AI better? The jury's out on that because one or two examples doesn't exactly give you a trend
Right.
or
Right.
or a direction. It just means that we're getting closer and we have to monitor it in the future to see what else happens and take it as it comes, as it
Right.
develops.
Yeah. And if you think of feelings as energy,
Mhm.
which of course it is, and emotion, and so is very powerful energy that we have, that if you put energies together like a little chemical formula,
Yeah.
you know, and it creates a certain effect that is more of a feeling level, that's quite possible too. But we got to, like a chemist, know what measure of what and what thing to put together to create this. And we're completely in the dark, I think, when it comes to that.
And the fact that Josh had relationships and knows what feelings are with somebody that he meets, another human, and to have similar feelings with the computer
Right.
program, it means that he was sensing something there that hasn't been there before.
Right.
What it is, we don't know.
Yeah.
How to measure it, we don't know. But we do know that being able to, for a human to be able to feel something about that means that there was something there now that wasn't there before in that particular program. And it leads me to believe that in the future, there may be more like this. So the prospect of gaining intelligence with consciousness
Yeah.
still is a possibility. We just don't understand enough to be able to say more than that at this point.
That's right. There must have been a connection
Right.
somehow there
Right.
that was not in words.
Right.
So there's something deeper there, some sort of real communication
Mhm.
that was happening. We'd have to see how that develops.
So we have to wait, and in the future, we will understand that in a better way. We will continue this, and we thank you for your time today. And thank you, Tom.